Okay, welcome to today's webinar titled Simple Mainframe ETL, where we're going to share a little bit about how you can enhance your ETL um, processes in a cost-effective and fast manner. And I am Dustin Froyam. I'm one of the co-founders and currently lead our alliances function. And today our main presenter is my colleague and friend, Mark Potts, and he leads our services and our ISV relationship. Mark, prior to joining VirtualZ, spent 17 years at Accenture, including leading their mainframe modernization work. And so just a little bit about the agenda and some logistics for today. So today's meeting is being recorded and it'll be available on replay on YouTube. And also, if we welcome questions along the way, if you just put those in the chat, we'll take those. And I do have a few questions that were submitted ahead of time. We're going to go a little bit over our overall product portfolio and the company itself, and then we'll get into PropelZ and the simplified ETL model, leave a little time for Q&A, and we'll move on from there. So without further ado, I'll give it over to you, Mark.
Thank you, Dustin. I appreciate the intro. Thank you, everybody, for watching our overview of Simple ETL. So just a little bit of background, like Dustin mentioned, around VirtualZ. We are a mainframe software startup. We are woman-founded. We believe we're actually the first ever and only woman-founded mainframe software startup ever. And with our team, we've got over 200 years of experience with the mainframe. So we've got folks on our team as our chief technology officer that spent over 30 plus years at CA developing a large portion of the CA's portfolio around the mainframe, including top secret. Dustin spent a significant amount of time at Wells Fargo managing the contracts around mainframe and other infrastructure with IBM. And then Jeannie was a seller for a long time at CA in the mainframe software space and in hardware space. So a little bit of background on our products on the next slide. Everything we're going to talk about today, we try to achieve really three goals and objectives around our products. The first one is to achieve business agility on the mainframe. So one of the things that we often hear from our clients is being able to do things quicker and faster and respond to things in the market. And so our products are designed to be very lightweight and very easy to use and allow you to do things in a much faster way and don't require a significant amount of mainframe skills, which brings me to our second piece. A lot of the products that we have the products that we bring are focused on making it easier for non-mainframe skilled resources to access data and use our products. And then you'll also see that our products are cost effective, with two of our products being zip eligible and our third being very lightweight and not a very big footprint from a CPU standpoint. And so a quick overview of our three products, and then I'll talk about the one that we're going to focus on today. Lozen is essentially a NFS server that runs on the mainframe. So if you think of something like OneDrive or Google Drive, Lozen is essentially the equivalent of that for the mainframe. So you can do full read-write access to files sitting on the mainframe, whether it be vSAM, QSAM, or anything else that's on the mainframe. You have full read-write capabilities, and we do real-time data transformation. So you could actually open those files and read them in formats like JSON, for example. ZAC is the opposite of that, allows the mainframe to connect to things like storage on the cloud or off the mainframe in a distributed storage environment like SAN storage to save cost and have access to storage on demand. So being able to actually keep your files in the cloud, for example, but access them as if they're still on the mainframe. Security and everything still stays in place for both Lozen and ZAC as they do today. PropelZ is the one we're going to focus on today. PropelZ is the lightweight ETL solution. So in a lot of our client conversations, clients are looking to take data and actually replicate it into an environment off the mainframe, right? So if I've got a vSAM file, for example, a terabyte of data, and I want to get it up to the cloud to do analytics, AI, reporting, or even other things that I might want to do to that data, transform that data into other areas of my business. PropelZ is a very simple, easy way to do that. It's really cost effective. As I mentioned earlier, that's one of our objectives. PropelZ is unlimited, $50,000. Run it as often as you want. Unlimited installs as well. Many of the competitors in this space are charging $60 a gig, right, to actually access your data and replicate it to the cloud, which is extremely expensive. So you can see PropelZ is a very cost effective, and I'll get into that a little bit more as we move forward. All right, so let's get into an overview of PropelZ. So PropelZ can, on the next slide, we'll talk about how PropelZ can connect to any data source that has a JDBC driver. And so this is um, so you can see here on the right-hand side the common databases that you see in the market. So an Oracle, an IBM DB2, right, a MySQL. Those are all very common things that I'm sure most of our listeners are used to or grew up using. But we also can connect to some of the more modern data sources or data lakes out on the market as well. So Postgres, Spark, Couch, DB, Databricks, S3, Snowflake. Um, PropelZ has that ability to connect to anything that has a JDBC driver. And we do support, I'll get into out of the box, 5 databases out of the box. And if you wanted to expand, for example, and connect to Snowflake, you can bring the open source or this JDBC driver from Snowflake, upload it into your mainframe environment, configure PropelZ to access that JDBC driver, and start replicating data over to Snowflake. So that opens, because it'll connect to anything with a JDBC driver. You can imagine, right, with all the different data sources out there that support JDBC, you can access, any sort of, almost every single data store out there on the market today. So in a little bit more detail, right? So like I said, we actually include 5 databases in our ship package of PropelZ today. So what's included? MySQL, Oracle, MongoDB, Postgres, and SQL Server Azure SQL are all set up to the ship when you buy PropelZ, no additional cost. You can connect to those databases out of the box. Again, if you so choose that you want to connect to IBM DB2, Alloy DB, or Snowflake, you can still install PropelZ, and then you FTP up your Snowflake driver, and you configure your basic configuration of PropelZ, and now you're connected to Snowflake. So you can replicate vSAM file, for example, or QSAM file, or flat file, or any other type of file that's sitting on the mainframe. You can take that file, tell PropelZ that you want to take that file and replicate it over to the data source of your choice. PropelZ has a bunch of good features in it where we actually can read the metadata of the file that you want to replicate and develop and design essentially on the fly your database structure, right? So if you've got arrays within a vSAM file, we can create the master table and then the subtable for those arrays as well. And so by taking in, when you actually pass in the file that you want to replicate, you actually pass in something like a copybook, right, or metadata. In this case, a copybook for the example I'm talking about. And we take that metadata and we read it and we create the schema on the fly to the data source on the database of your choice, right, that you're trying to replicate data to. We can drop all the data if you want to, or we can do incremental updates as well through some configuration. If you had a terabyte of data that you wanted to start with, but overnight you did a batch job that wrote to that vSAM file, and it only updated maybe 2 gigs of data in that terabyte file, we can actually just take that 2 gigs, what changed, and replicate it back over to the data source of your choice. So you're not actually transforming a terabyte of data every single time you're running PropelZ. That's one of the ways we save cost. It improves performance of PropelZ as well, and allows you to run PropelZ more often. And it doesn't use as many CPU cycles, right? And since PropelZ is 100% zip eligible, we're not going to use a whole bunch of MIPS anyways. We're going to stay contained within that zip engine as well. One of the things that I want to make sure that we call out when we talk about propels is often a lot of the things on the market today require MQ or a messaging platform, or it's expensive ETL tool that requires some sort of JDBC connection or some sort of connection back into the mainframe. All those things can be expensive, costly, and increase you increase your MIPS on the mainframe, which we know drives up costs, right, as a whole. We do not require any sort of vSAN logging or anything else. So again, we are very simple, lightweight, easy to install. You can actually install and start running propels in the same day. It won't take very long to install and configure and actually connect to your data source of choice, right? We do the data transformation as well. So we do convert from EBCDIC to ASCII. And so we can actually um, transform all that data and do all the coding if you want to. You can also store things as a blob if you prefer that method as well. So if you don't want the relational data model and schema in your data source of choice, we can just do is store the data from a vSAN file or a QSAN file or flat file as a blob in the data source of your choice. We don't need APIs. We don't need any sort of additional integration into the mainframe or all the APIs of the database. We do everything strictly through JDBC as of now.
Mark,
Um,
Mark, I had a
yeah,
couple questions that came up.
sure.
So it says we don't require VSAM logging, but are we compatible with transactional VSAM and like record level sharing RLS?
Yeah, absolutely. So you can do transactional vSAM and RLS as well. We can do flat files. We can do QSAM. We can do really any of those ASDS. All the files, everything you see over there on the right hand side, we can handle any file format that's sitting on the mainframe. We do not support though integration as of right now into like IMS or IDMS or Datacom. But that is something we could support if you wanted to do an extraction of that data. You would extract that data to a file, and then you could pass that file into PropelZ and replicate that data over to the data source of your choice. So
Mark, could
is
you
that
talk, yeah, could you talk a little bit about, even though that's PropelZ today, maybe a little bit about the roadmap and where PropelZ is going?
yeah, no, good question. So first phase of PropelZ is to take the data and replicate it over. You can run it as often as you want. The next phase of PropelZ is actually to do real-time replication. So we know how to actually read a vSAN file and look at the transactions as they're happening within a vSAN. The future release of PropelZ will take that transaction and replicate it to the data source of your choice. So pretty much as real time as it gets. And again, we won't require vSAN logging or anything else additional. You'll just install PropelZ and be able to configure it to manage that vSAN file and replicate the data to your choice. Now, the key is being able to write that data back to the mainframe. So if let's just say you've got a scenario where you've got a vSAN file that you're writing to on the mainframe, you replicate that data with PropelZ in real time to an Oracle database. As you write to that Oracle database in the cloud, you might want to replicate that back to your vSAN file. That will be a future feature of PropelZ to do that real time replication back and forth between the two data sources. So I think an obvious question that we often get as well is around performance. So we have a very small mainframe that IBM has provided us. So not anything very significant, just a normal network. Our initial testing, we were able to take over 6,000 records a second and replicate from a vSAN file to a Postgres database on AWS. So 6,000 records per second to a Postgres database on AWS. Like I said, a small, very, very, very small mainframe, not a enterprise connection or an enterprise environment on the AWS side either, right? So just a very simple, basic Postgres database. So that's pretty good performance to be able to write 6,000 records a second. And you can imagine that would significantly increase as we, invest in a larger mainframe. If you had a larger mainframe, which for everybody that has a larger mainframe than us right now, and invested in that bandwidth, which most companies are already going to have pretty good bandwidth between their data center and cloud provider. And then you can imagine that as you increase the virtual CPUs in the environment and get it to an enterprise environment on the cloud side, you'll get even better performance there as well.
Yeah, Mark, maybe I can just share a customer that I'm working with. They have a a batch job that's taking about 90 minutes and pretty significant resources, just a classic ETL job. And we're, besides the zip processor savings, we're working to bring that 90-minute batch job down to about 8 to 9 minutes. So you can see what the performance benefits of PropelZ does for that customer in that scenario.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, that's the objective, right? A lot of the things on the market have a lot of great features and complexities to them, right? Ours is designed to be very simple to install, very easy to use. You can include it in your existing JCL if you wanted to, and in other solutions so that you can actually start reading and writing, reading a VSAM file or file in a mainframe over to a data source in the cloud very quickly, without a significant amount of um, resources, right? Development time or anything else. Like we said, it's really a no-code ETL solution. Basic configuration, get your environment set up, and you should be up and running very quickly.
Mark, I have a question about just the licensing model and the cost. So not only the resource savings, but just the cost of the product and how that works.
Yeah, I briefly mentioned it at the beginning, but it's good to cover it again, right? So we license PropelZ unlimited use, unlimited installs in your mainframe environment for $50,000, right? So if you've got a terabyte of data that you want to replicate every single day, we're not going to charge you per gig to do that, right? So if you want to replicate that terabyte of data every day, please go right ahead. It's only $50,000 a year. Like I said, we support these 5 databases, as you see at the top there, out of the box. So MySQL, Oracle, MongoDB, SQL Server, and then Postgres, direct connections. Like I said, it's part of the $50,000 cost. If you want to add something like Databricks, you can add Databricks JDBC driver on your own. If you want support for us, that's a little bit of an additional cost to help you support, configure, or even certify that for you. But it should be pretty straightforward to add like a Databricks JDBC driver to your PropelZ environment, put in your class path, and start using it pretty quickly. But we do charge a little bit extra if you need additional support for the drivers that are the 5, in addition to the 5 drivers that are already included in PropelZ. We do plan to expand over time, the base drivers, but right now we're just supporting these 5. These are the most common that we get questions around from our clients.
And Mark, what about supporting additional mainframe data sources? Is that something that's in the roadmap?
Yeah, we know that there's definitely a need around Datacom and IMS and IDMS, and those solutions, for example, or even doing something with DB2 on a mainframe. Um, we can work with you on that. We really wanted to go after the one that seems to be the most complex in the market with VSAM and QSAM and those files. But if you want to integrate PropelZ with IMS or IDMS, we can sit down and talk to you about those requirements and see if we can develop a solution for you. We know how to do it. We have a good approach around how to do it. We just want to verify that with you as a customer on that approach and what you're trying to accomplish to make sure it meets your needs. But yeah, that is something that we do have in the pipeline, plan to enhance, but we're just waiting for that demand, built up demand from the clients to do that.
Okay, that's all the questions that I had received, Mark. Any other parting
Nope.
kind of items on PropelZ that you wanted to share?
No, I mean, the only other thing I'd say is just overview VirtualZ computing.com. You can go and see blogs, additional material on PropelZ. You can also go and look at demos of PropelZ online as well. We do show a replication of us taking data from a vSAM file and put it on my SQL database, and go into how PropelZ reads the copybook, reads the file, and replicates that and builds the schema on the MySQL database all automatically. So I encourage you to go to our site. So, and if you have any additional questions, please do not hesitate to reach out to Weston or I. Our emails are here. and on this slide, and be happy to take any questions you have. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.